There is a certain quality of silence that settles in after a deep wound, especially when it's inflicted by someone to whom we have given a piece of our trust, our affection. It is not a peaceful silence, but a painful echo that reverberates through the empty rooms of our inner sanctuary. It's as if a melody that once soothed our soul was abruptly cut short, leaving a dissonant note hanging in the air, one that refuses to fade. This experience, both universal and intensely personal, places us at a crossroads. One path invites us to build walls, to sharpen the weapons of our grief, and to prepare for a battle that promises justice, but, in truth, only perpetuates the war within ourselves. The other path, more subtle and infinitely more courageous, invites us to look inward, not to ignore the rubble, but to find amidst it the seeds of a transformative wisdom. This is a journey that doesn't seek to erase the scar, but rather to understand it as part of a map that leads us to a vaster and more serene territory of ourselves. The first impulse, almost instinctual, is the desire to return the pain. It's a thirst for the very poison we were given, a belief that by offering it back we will find relief. We want the other person to feel the weight of what they caused, to understand the scale of the fracture they created. However, wisdom traditions such as the Buddhist philosophy offer us a radically different perspective. They teach us that responding to fire with more fire only results in an uncontrollable inferno, one that will consume not only the target of our rage, but, most importantly, our own home, our own peace. To cultivate compassion at this moment is not an act of absolution for the one who hurt us, but an act of radical self-preservation. Imagine a gardener who, upon finding their flower bed filled with stones, understands that the priority is not to throw them back, but to care for the soil that remains, to nourish it with fresh water and nutrients so that life can sprout once more. Compassion, in this context, is the fresh water for our own roots, which have been desiccated by resentment. It is the conscious choice to not allow another person's action to dictate the quality of our inner world. It is recognizing that holding on to resentment is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. This choice not to retaliate leads us into a second inner territory, the mindful observation of our own emotional storm. Anger is a powerful force, a living flame that ignites with breathtaking speed. It colors our thoughts, accelerates our heart, and impels us toward immediate action. We feel the blood pulsing in our temples, a knot forming in our throat, a feverish energy seeking an outlet. Wisdom is not found in denying this flame or trying to extinguish it by force, for that would be like trying to hold back a flood with your bare hands. Instead, the invitation is to become the observer of this flame. It is to take a metaphorical step back and watch the dance of the fire without being consumed by it. It's to acknowledge with disarmed honesty, anger is here. I feel it in my body. I see it in my thoughts. This simple act of recognition, of naming what we feel without judgment, creates a vital space between the feeling and the reaction. Within that space lies our freedom. It is the moment we cease to be a boat tossed on the storm's waves and become the lighthouse, which observes the turmoil with firmness, anchored to its own foundation. Anchoring yourself in the rhythm of your own breath, even for a few seconds, is the act that returns your emotional sovereignty. It doesn't mean the pain vanishes, but it does mean that we do not vanish within the pain. By observing anger without acting, we are not suppressing it, we are processing it. We allow its energy to manifest, and like all energy, it eventually dissipates, losing the force that would have driven us to acts and words we would later deeply regret. This is the first and most crucial practice for anyone who wishes to transform poison into medicine. Once the turbulent waters of our own emotions begin to calm, we are granted a new kind of sight. From the stable shore of our mindful presence, we can look across at the person who caused the wound, and the landscape of their actions begins to look different. This is not about making excuses for them, nor is it about rushing to forgiveness. It is a far more pragmatic and self-liberating act, the act of understanding. The wisdom here lies in a simple but profound truth. People can only give what they have inside. Imagine every person as a vessel. If a vessel is filled to the brim with unresolved pain, with fear, with insecurity, with its own inner chaos, then that is what will inevitably spill out onto others when shaken. The hurtful words, the thoughtless actions, the betrayal. Very often, these are not a precisely aimed arrow intended for our heart, but rather the chaotic overflow of another's inner suffering. When we begin to see it this way, a crucial shift happens. We start to depersonalize the pain. It ceases to be a reflection of our worth or a deliberate attack on our being, and instead becomes a tragic expression of their own state. This understanding is the key that begins to unlock the shackles of resentment. It doesn't make the cut hurt any less, but it stops the bleeding, because we realize we were not the primary target, but simply standing in the path of a storm that began long before it reached us. This shift in perspective directly confronts one of the heaviest burdens we carry in the aftermath of being hurt: the desire for revenge. The longing for retribution feels righteous. It feels like a way to balance the scales, to reclaim a sense of power. But the desire for revenge is an anchor, and it keeps our ship moored to the very shipwreck that wounded us. To nurse a wish for vengeance is to willingly chain ourselves to the past, to constantly relive the moment of impact, to give the person who hurt us free rent in the most valuable real estate we own, our mind. Letting go of this anchor is not a gift to them. It is the ultimate act of setting ourselves free. It is a declaration that our journey forward is more important than their punishment. It is choosing to sail toward new horizons rather than staying anchored in a polluted harbor, staring at the wreckage. The ocean of life is vast and filled with islands of peace, joy, and new connections waiting to be discovered. But we can never reach them if we refuse to pull up the anchor. Releasing the need for revenge is the moment we take back the helm of our own ship. We are telling the universe, and more importantly ourselves, my energy will no longer be spent on this past pain. It will now be invested in building my future peace. This isn't weakness. It is the pinnacle of emotional strength. It is choosing the expansive freedom of the open sea over the cramped, bitter prison of resentment. And as we speak of this journey, we are deeply aware that it can often feel like a solitary one. We watch videos like this, we read, we reflect, but we are still alone with our own thoughts. We believe that true healing thrives not in isolation, but in connection. It thrives in the quiet knowledge that we are not the only ship navigating these challenging waters. So, if the explorations we are sharing here resonate with you, if this space feels like a welcoming harbor on your journey, we invite you to become a part of it. You can do this by following our channel, ensuring you don't miss the next steps of this path we are walking together. But more than that, we want to invite you to break the silence. In the space below, if you feel moved and safe to do so, we invite you to share a small piece of your story. You don't need to recount the details of the hurt. Instead, perhaps you could share just one word that represents the healing you are seeking. It could be peace, clarity, freedom, courage, release. Powered by sharing that single word, you're not just leaving a comment for an algorithm. You're lighting a small candle in this digital space. You are letting your light join with others, and in doing so, you remind every single person who reads it that they are not alone in their search for healing. Your one word could be the quiet signal that another soul has been waiting to see. A common misunderstanding can arise when we speak of understanding another's pain. We might believe that to understand is to condone, and that to be compassionate is to become a passive recipient of harmful behavior. This could not be further from the truth. The wisdom we are cultivating is not a path to victimhood. It is the very foundation of our sovereignty. Now that we have quieted our own storm and broadened our perspective, we must engage in one of the most crucial acts of self-love: building wise boundaries. Think of your inner life, your peace, your emotions, your well-being as a sacred garden. In the first steps, we tended to the soil and pulled the weeds of reactive hatred. Now we must learn to build a fence. A fence is not the same as a wall. A wall is born of fear and anger. It is a cold, impenetrable barrier designed to shut the world out entirely. A fence, however, is a structure of wisdom and respect. It has a gate, and you are the gatekeeper. Its purpose is not to punish those on the outside, but to protect the precious life that is blossoming on the inside. Building this fence means learning to say no with a calm and steady voice. Not a no that screams with anger, but a no that speaks with the quiet authority of self-respect. It may mean limiting contact with a person who consistently drains your energy, or choosing to walk away from a dynamic that is fundamentally unhealthy. This is not an act of aggression. It is an act of clarity. It is honoring the truth that you cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot cultivate a garden that is constantly being trampled. Protecting your peace is not selfish. It is the prerequisite for having anything genuine to offer the world. Once we are standing safely within the bounds of our protected garden, we are finally able to work with the wound itself. For a long time, the pain is just a raw, throbbing presence. But with safety and perspective, we can begin the sacred work of transformation. The ancient alchemists sought to turn lead into gold, and this provides us with a powerful metaphor for our own inner work. The experience of being hurt is like being handed a piece of lead. It's heavy, it's dull, it feels worthless and burdensome. The initial instinct is to throw it away, to deny it, to bury it. But the path of wisdom invites us to build a fire, the fire of our awareness and curiosity, and to place this lead within it. The alchemical process begins when we change the fundamental question we are asking. We stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" A question that keeps us stuck in a state of victimhood. Instead, we begin to ask, "What is this here to teach me?" This single shift is the catalyst for transmutation. It moves us from a passive role to an active one, from being the subject of a painful event to being the student of a profound lesson. This alchemical fire, fueled by our sincere inquiry, begins to reveal the gold hidden within the lead of our pain. What might this gold look like? It can manifest in countless forms. Perhaps the experience reveals a strength and resilience you never knew you possessed, showing you that you can withstand a storm that you once thought would break you. It might illuminate a pattern in your relationships, a tendency to give too much or trust too quickly, offering you the clarity needed to make healthier choices in the future. Often, the gold is a newfound depth of empathy. Having known suffering so intimately, your heart becomes more attuned to the suffering of others, making you a more compassionate presence in the world. The pain can act as a great clarifier, burning away the non-essential and showing you what you truly value, what you stand for, and what you will no longer compromise. The scar that remains is no longer a symbol of your woundedness, but a shining testament to your alchemical power. It proves that you can take the heaviest, most painful experiences of your life and forge them into wisdom, strength, and a deeper connection to your own soul. You did not ask for the lead, but you chose to create gold from it, and that is a power that no one can ever take away from you. We have now completed the third block. The narrative is moving from perspective shifting into active, empowered healing. Even after we have built our wise fences and begun the alchemical work of turning pain into wisdom, we may find a final, stubborn thread still tethering us to the past. It is the thread of unforgiveness. The word itself is heavy, often misunderstood as an obligation to pardon or reconcile with those who have wronged us. But in the context of our own healing, forgiveness is something else entirely. It is not a gift we give to the other person. It is the final key to our own freedom. Imagine that holding on to resentment is like being locked in a room with the person who hurt you. You may think you are keeping them prisoner by refusing to forgive, but you are locked in that room right alongside them, forced to breathe the same stale air of the past, day after day. Forgiveness is the profound realization that you have had the key to your own door all along. To use that key is not to say, what you did was acceptable. It doesn't erase the harm or absolve the other person of their actions. It simply means you are choosing to step out of that room, to lock the door behind you, and to walk away into the fresh, open air of your own life. It is the ultimate declaration that says, you no longer have the power to occupy my heart or my mind. This space is mine again. This act of inner forgiveness is rarely a single, dramatic event. More often, it is a quiet, patient process. It is a gentle whisper to ourselves, repeated as many times as necessary. I release this. I let this go. I choose my peace over this pain. It is the cutting of the last energetic cord, allowing us to finally and completely reclaim our own inner territory. Once we step out of that room, truly free from the grip of the past, we are faced with a beautiful and vital question. Now what? We have this reclaimed inner space, this garden that is now protected and cleared of its heaviest stones. What shall we grow here? If we are not intentional, the winds will carry in whatever seeds happen to be floating by. Seeds of anxiety from the news, seeds of comparison from social media, seeds of fear from the collective consciousness. Before we know it, our pristine garden can become overgrown with weeds we never chose to plant. Therefore, the next stage of our journey is to become a conscious gardener of the mind. This is a proactive and ongoing practice of cultivating the mental and emotional states that we wish to inhabit. It is the understanding that our inner world does not have to be a random reflection of our outer circumstances. It can be a deliberate creation of our own intention. This practice is twofold. It involves both diligent weeding and joyful planting. The act of weeding is mindfulness in action. It is the practice of noticing without judgment when the weeds of unproductive thought patterns begin to sprout. These are the familiar intruders, the endless rumination over what happened, the anxious projections about the future, the sharp-toothed whispers of self-criticism. As the conscious gardener, we don't fight these weeds or berate ourselves for their presence. We simply acknowledge them. There is the story of worry again. And gently, lovingly, we pull them out and let them go, returning our focus to the present moment, to our breath, to the solid ground beneath our feet. This alone creates space, but that space is meant to be filled. This is where the joyful act of planting comes in. We must deliberately choose the seeds we want to cultivate. If we want peace, we must plant seeds of serenity. If we want joy, we must plant seeds of gratitude. The practice of gratitude is perhaps the most potent fertilizer for the human soul. It is the conscious effort to scan our experience, not for what is missing, but for what is present. It is training our minds to notice the simple goodness, the warmth of the sun on our skin, the comfort of a bed, a moment of shared laughter, the simple miracle of a body that breathes. By consistently watering these seeds of gratitude and positivity, we create a thriving inner ecosystem that is resilient, beautiful, and deeply nourishing. Our mind becomes less of a battlefield and more of a sanctuary. It becomes a place we want to be, a garden that can bloom even in the harshest of seasons. The path we have walked together through these ideas, from observing our inner fire to understanding the other, to building our sacred garden, to becoming the alchemist of our own pain, is not a linear checklist to be completed and then discarded. It is rather the beginning of a new way of being. In the beginning, these practices require conscious effort. It feels like learning a new language. We have to deliberately translate our old reactive impulses into this new language of compassion and wisdom. We might stumble over the words, mix up the grammar, and feel clumsy in our attempts. There will be days when the old habits resurface, when a sudden storm of anger catches us off guard, or when we find ourselves locked back in that room of resentment, having forgotten we hold the key. This is not failure. It is simply part of the learning process. The goal is not instant perfection, but gentle and persistent practice. It is like a musician returning to their scales each day, not because they failed the day before, but because the repetition is what builds mastery. Over time, something miraculous begins to happen. We stop translating. We begin to think in this new language. Compassion ceases to be a tool we use and becomes the lens through which we see. Wisdom is no longer a concept we strive for, but the very ground on which we walk. It becomes our native tongue. As we become more fluent in this language of the heart, a natural and profound sense of trust begins to emerge. It is a trust in the integrity of the process itself. Some call this karma, a word that can sometimes be misinterpreted as a cosmic system of reward and punishment. But we can also see it as a simple trust in the unwavering law of cause and effect, an understanding of our role within the great flow of life. Imagine your life as a river. Every thought, every word, and every action is a drop of water that you contribute to its current. Actions born from anger, resentment, and a desire for revenge are like adding mud and poison to your own river. They cloud its waters and slow its journey. Actions born from clarity, compassion, and a desire to heal are like adding clear, fresh water. They purify the current and help it flow more freely. We cannot control the rivers of others. We cannot force them to clear their own waters. To even try is an exhausting and fruitless task. Our sacred work is only with our own river. By focusing entirely on the quality of the water we add, we develop a deep trust that our river will naturally find its way to a clear and expansive ocean. This releases us from the immense burden of trying to be the judge and jury of the universe. We let go of the need for a specific outcome or a visible balancing of the scales. and instead we place our faith in the simple, elegant power of our own conscious choices. Our peace is no longer dependent on the actions of others, but becomes a direct consequence of our own integrity. And so we arrive not at an end, but at a new beginning. The pain that once felt like a devastating conclusion has revealed itself to be a powerful catalyst. The wound that we thought had shattered us has, through our own courageous work, become a doorway to a more authentic, resilient, and compassionate version of ourselves. We are not just survivors of our history. We are the alchemists who have learned to create light from the darkness. This journey of turning our deepest wounds into our greatest wisdom is a quiet path, and it may not be for everyone. But if you have listened this far, it is likely because you are one of the quiet ones. You are one of the gardeners, one of the alchemists, one of the gatekeepers of your own sacred space. You are one of the people who believe that healing is real, that peace is worth striving for, and that the human heart holds a capacity for transformation that is boundless. This channel is intended to be a gathering place for souls like you. If you wish to continue sharing this path with a community of fellow travelers, the simplest way to stay connected is to join our circle. The invitation is and always will be open. Thank you for walking with us today. Be well and be kind to yourself.